The sudden announcement of President Richard Nixon's visit to China astonished the world.
China and the United States is to seek the normalization of relations between the two countries, and also to exchange views on questions of concern to the two sides.
In many ways, the warmest and closest relations which ever existed between the Chinese Communists and the Americans occurred during World War II in Yan'an, when the so-called Dixie Mission, a group of American officers and diplomats went to the Chinese capital and took up residence there as a liaison to the United States. They got on extremely well with Zhou Enlai, with Mao Zedong, with Zhu De, with all of the Chinese Communist commanders. And out of this grew a warmth and depth of relationship which was not to be equaled for many, many years into the future. But it existed. And in the State Department, there are still today the reports of those men and their evaluation of the Chinese Communists. They believed they were going to win the Civil War, which would follow the war, and that the United States could and should and would work with the Chinese Communists. It would take many years before that prophecy would be fulfilled.
Chinese messages intending to improve Sino-American relations had been signaled in various ways. The first signal was in October 1970, when Mao Zedong put his friend, American journalist Edgar Snow, on the revolutionary stand. According to Henry Kissinger, then Secretary of State, this signal was so subtle that many Americans did not take any notice of it. The second signal was the invitation extended to American ping-pong players who were participating in the international table tennis tournament held in Tokyo in April 1971. This so-called ping-pong diplomacy clearly conveyed the Chinese desire to improve Sino-American relations. Three months later, the news that Kissinger had made a secret visit to China startled the world.
It is the tradition of the great Chinese dynasties that alien powers come to Beijing to pay tribute and kowtow to the emperor, a tradition which Mao himself knew very, very well. And it is against this that one must evaluate how Mao regarded the decision of President Nixon to come to Beijing personally and meet with him. It was a sign that China really had resumed its normal position as a great power, if not the greatest power in the world. The psychological value of Nixon's gesture could hardly be conceived by Americans who are used to going this way and that way, people coming and going. But in China, the fact that the President of the United States, the greatest power on earth, had come to meet with Mao in the very seat of empire was a stupendous thing. It meant that China, indeed, under Mao, had come of age.
Spielberg's original time-warping action movie. Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, driven back to the future by the power of love. New West premiere, Back to the Future, tonight at 9 on World Channel.
Saturday showcase, The Dirty Dozen Next Mission. Another 12 convicted GIs are on a deadly mission. Can renegade officer Major Reisman keep his control, or will he crack under pressure? War and Heroes, Saturday at 9, World Channel.
Some 6 months before the Nixon visit to China, an incident occurred which was supposedly connected with the change in Sino-American relations. It became known as Lin Biao's attempted coup d'etat. The Chinese government later stated that Lin Biao had plotted to murder Chairman Mao, and after the conspiracy was uncovered, he tried to flee by aeroplane and was killed when the plane crashed in Mongolia.
If there was one position of danger in the hierarchy, it was to be number 2 to Mao. Sooner or later, Mao would decide that that man had ambitions, and he would move him away, sometimes eliminate him entirely. Lin Biao felt he was in that particular situation. And that is the moment, I believe, when he conceived the notion that if he was going to get this power, which Mao had willed to them, he had to act instantly. He couldn't wait for Mao to die. And that was the germination of the plot which ultimately resulted in Lin Biao's own death.
Official Chinese reports claimed that Lin Biao had ordered the assassination of Mao Zedong in September 1971, after failing to become president of China, a post he coveted. Lin Biao targeted the train in which Mao was believed to be riding on his way back to Beijing from his villa in Hangzhou, Zhejiang province. The assassination plot supposedly involved, first, having flamethrowers and rocket launchers assault the train, then detonating gasoline tanks planted along the track, and finally blowing the train up on a railway bridge. However, it was claimed that the plan was aborted when the conspiracy was discovered.
I've always been suspicious of it for various reasons. One of the most prominent, is the amateurish touches which we've been given about what happened. Supposedly, Lin Biao's son was the main operator making arrangements, and he used a primitive code in which such things, Mao was designated B-52, and there were code names for the various groups which were going to support Lin Biao. All of it sounded a little bit amateurish, a little bit juvenile, a little bit like a high school plot rather than some serious conspirators. Maybe that's just the way conspiracies go in China, I don't know. But it doesn't convince me that this was a serious, an actually serious conspiracy if that kind of codes and those kind of concepts were dominant.
Lin Biao was staying at Beidahe, the famous summer resort on the Bohai Gulf. When he believed that the plot had been discovered, Lin Biao called his private plane to the nearby Shanghai Guan airport and fled to the north.
On the other hand, we have evidence that Mao said, don't shoot down Lin Biao's plane, although they could still have gotten it had he acted at that particular moment. Why should he have said, don't shoot down the plane? Then, according to another version, he was very happy when he found out that the plane had crashed. These are mysteries within a mystery,